Well, Dave is off there. Well. Dave is off there. I can see the
Yeah,
back of his chair. That is all. He's clearly getting coffee. Not prepared at all for the show ever. Never.
oh, I was just turning that light off. I was just only feet away from turning that light off.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara, your show about news impacting Niagara, the Niagara Falls area. And we'll lead off this morning with um, sad news. Jimmy Cliff, Jamaican reggae music pioneer, died at 81. Interesting, Dave. Do you know where I first saw this notice yesterday?
Where?
I saw this on a page that flashed up on my Facebook, UB40. An interesting UB40 was a British reggae band, all
I
white
know them.
reggae
Yeah,
band, who the term UB40 is an unemployment benefit form, right?
I know that too.
Yep. And basically, they did a lot of cover versions of Jimmy Cliff's music, including Many Rivers to Cross and Johnny Too Bad, which both appeared on the Labor of Love album. And it was on their
Johnny Too
page.
Bad was a Slickers. Johnny Too Bad was a Slickers tune. Comes from the band The Slickers. It was in the movie soundtrack of The Harder They Come, and it
Yeah.
was done by the Slickers originally. Johnny, you're too bad. Whoa ho ho.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. But it was it was
fighting in it,
interesting that I
shooting
first
in
saw it
him.
there.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Go on, Dave.
So that's yeah. So I remember Jimmy Cliff because early when I think it was still in the 70s, basically late 70s, mid to late 70s. There, that The Harder They Come came out. I took a girl to go see it in Brock University. It wasn't being shown in regular theaters. It was being shown in universities and
Yeah.
sort of other places. And I went to see it. I took a girl there to see it, and it was. We are the only persons that weren't of Caribbean descent in the whole theater.
Okay. Well, interesting that we've got, of course, the one people who we've lost this year includes Ozzy Osbourne from Black Sabbath, Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, Diane Keaton died recently as well.
Yeah, so the stars are sort of, well, that's gonna be typical. Jimmy Cliff was 81. He had pneumonia and he had a seizure thereafter. So he probably would
Yeah,
have survived the pneumonia if it didn't bring on a seizure. But a
yeah,
lot of these people, a lot of artists don't exactly live a healthy lifestyle. When I was in Jamaica back in 2018 there, I asked about Jimmy Cliff. I wondered if he was still around. And they said, oh, yeah, he's still here. He's still doing stuff. So,
mm. No, people like that don't just, they continue on their whole lifetime.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, we got local bands who we got. I don't know what happened to him, whether he's still around. We got a local artist who was, last I knew, was still alive and kicking in his 90s.
Oh, that you mean T-Bone Taylor?
Yeah,
Big John T-Bone Taylor?
yeah,
Not Taylor, Little.
not
Big John
Little, yeah,
T-Bone.
T-Bone Little. That's the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Is he still alive and kicking? I haven't heard anything further. But
I don't know. He was playing right into his, like, I think he was like 92 or 93. He was still
yeah,
playing, but uh, I don't know if they can still get him out on the stage. I saw him a couple of years ago. Some
yeah.
of his relatives were in the audience that I knew. Well, one of them that I knew,
Oh,
and
so he
he
did
was
the
playing his
soundtrack.
big.
So Jimmy Cliff did the soundtrack to the 1993 film Cool Runnings.
Okay, okay, yeah, he did a bunch of stuff. He did stuff with films. He did. Uh, he actually got Grammy Award winning albums. I think in two different times in the 20
Yeah,
in the 2000s.
and
Although his
He's worked with a huge number of people, including Rolling Stones, Elvis Costello, Annie Lennox, Paul Simon, and other great people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well known, great artist.
Yep. And then there's, well, you talking about UB40, and I remember the song "Red Red Wine," "Red Red Wine."
I don't know who did that one.
Well, UB40 covered it. UB40 covered it.
I know they did.
I think it's a traditional song, basically, but I don't know who originally wrote it.
No.
I think it goes back in time, though.
Yeah, and they wrote it in a reggae. They did it in a reggae style. Yeah.
Anyway, sad to see Jimmy Cliff go, but there was a lot of reggae artists there that we didn't really know too much about, but Jimmy Cliff was able to modernize it, or actually take reggae and put it into the poposphere. Basically, the tunes, they were reggae tunes that were sort of written and arranged to become pop hits, and they're very good ones. Many Rivers to Cross is like if you ever listen to the lyrics of that, that's a really sad song, but it's like sad.
It's very sad. Yeah.
It's really cool. And of course he covered tunes like what was the one he covered for the album? Anyway, I have the album. I should have dug it up and just showed you here. I got the album. I bought The Harder They Come back after I saw the movie. I thought that was pretty good. That was way back in the 70s. I still got it somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So it's always sad to hear a great artist go. Okay, moving on. House Republicans are warning that more resignations are coming.
Yes, this is very interesting. Like I've mentioned on this show a few times, and I've talked with friends of mine too, that I was just wondering, how long do you think the Republicans can take this? How long? And I was very upset at the Republicans for what I did not expect when Trump got in was the Republicans folding over like a bunch of wet blankets and see nothing, hear nothing, speak nothing type of attitude. They started all along. They would not. They just would not do anything that Trump didn't tell them to do through the Speaker, Mike Johnson. And more people are seeing them as puppets and sycophants, and that of the White House. I think they're getting sick of that. Actually, I think the constituents are getting sick of that. They don't expect you to be a fold over person.
Yeah.
Like when Massey and Rand Paul and Massey and others and Marjorie Taylor Greene started speaking up against them, the MAGA Republicans voiced a lot of opposition to that the beloved leader was right in all things and we should bow to him and do everything he says, and we follow him blindly. That was the message, but they can't sustain that anymore.
Yeah, and
they're being called out as cowards and lackeys, and I don't think they like that, and I don't think they see the midterms coming up and they look awful bad at this particular point. And I just didn't think that the Republicans, I was waiting for this, like I was hoping for this actually, that the Republicans would find a spine and face up to the beloved leader.
Are we what we are seeing here a split in the Republican Party?
We may have a split in the Republican Party, but you also have that similar split in the Democrat Party, although it's not as glaring right now because
they're in opposition. Yes, I know. Yeah. It's never glaring when you're in opposition, a split party. The only way it becomes a problem in opposition is if you can't unify behind a new leader and take shots at the power party in government.
It's always being said, did the Republicans win the last election or did the Democrats lose it?
Yeah.
Did the Democrats snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory? You could also say
that actually is a fair question because, because in fact, when it came out of the debate between Harris and Trump, Harris won that hands down, which is rare, and she just lost it from there.
Yeah, because she didn't say anything. She was afraid. The final nail in the coffin was when she was afraid to go on Joe Rogan's show. Like Joe Rogan interviewed Trump, and he gave him a lot of softball questions, and I imagine he would have done the same thing for Kamala, but they were so frightened. And when you show the American public that you're frightened to do something that simple, then that's got to go over bad. And she had 3 to 4 times as some people say she had 4 to 5 times as much money. Other people say it's 3 to 4 times as much money. But what is very clear, she had way more money than Trump did, and so did that whole campaign. And why they put Kamala Harris in? What?
She only lost by 1.5%.
She only lost by 1.5% of the popular vote, but that translated into majorities in the Senate, the Congress, and of course the executive. He won. Right now, the Republicans, whatever they're trying to do, the Project 2025 thing, you find all of Trump's people just spewing out exaggerations all over the place. Bessent, Ludnick, Rubio seems to be the only one that seems to have some sort of measured approach. I mean, he has his whenever he speaks, but everybody else talks about these huge lies. Lutnick, Bessent, Levitt is an idiot, and everybody's looking at this thinking this can't go on. This is a parade of fools in the White House, and how can we stop that? And everybody bowing down, and the Republicans are being hurt by the fact that they're bowing down. They bow every time the beloved leader speaks, and he threatens them with primaries. And when Marjorie Taylor Greene speaks her mind and talks about the uniparty, this is another thing too. She speaks of the uniparty, so she's being Republican. She's been trying to do these Republican things, so she says, and she finds herself faced with the uniparty, which is what is really happening in Washington. You have Republicans and you have Democrats, but they are different sides of the same coin. In the end, the powerful behind the scenes are getting what they want, whether it's the Republicans or Democrats. It's a sham fight in Congress and the Senate, because the powers that be eventually just fold. And we talked about this with AIPAC, how most of them are terrified even to speak about AIPAC, even though they're happy to take their money. And they won't even split. But we saw AOC, she froze up. Newsom's froze up. That other guy, what was the black guy who was the speaker? I don't know. I can't remember his name.
Can't remember his name, no.
Yeah, it's all these American politicians. I can't hold on to their names as well as I do Canadian ones, but that's what's happening now. So the Republicans obviously are not happy with their leadership. Even the MAGA ones are not happy. We see what happened with the Epstein thing. That could have been easily resolved. Trump just could have said, well, I'm in there a lot because I was friends with him. I decided not to be friends with him at a certain time, so I will be in those a lot, but I didn't indulge in the pedophilia part. And they're going to find all kinds of people in there. Larry Summers, for one thing, he is extremely humiliated because he kept communicating with Epstein up to a couple of months before the guy died, asking him dating advice, for crying out loud. What's wrong with that guy? This guy's being up on, at that time, up on new charges, who has already been charged back in the early 2000s or the about 2006, 2007. And then he's charged again, and Larry Summers phones him for dating advice to a pedophile that he knows is a pedophile and knows that I mean, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
What is wrong with them? I don't know.
And the point being is with Marjorie Taylor Greene has kind of effectively walked, she's walked away from MAGA because she was one of MAGA's biggest, biggest supporters, wasn't she, at one point?
Yeah, she was. She held Donald Trump and sang him from the rooftops what a great guy he was. And now is the time of the MAGA revolution. They're going to make America great again. But what she claims is when they try to do that, the White House puts a damper on everything. And if the beloved leader doesn't like it, or the beloved leader doesn't want anything moving on a certain thing, nothing happens. And the Republicans obediently bow down. We saw this when Trump suddenly wants new districts in Texas. And what happens is the Texas Republicans just bow down right away. Yes, sir, three bags full, sir. When they want to gerrymander districts, voting districts, halfway through the cycle, they do it on census years, and all of a sudden Trump says, "Look, I don't like our chances in their next election on the midterm. So, hey, Texas, you're gerrymandering me some districts so I can get 5 more seats. Yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir."
Yeah.
It was an order that came down from the president. It wasn't anything that was considered in the Texas legislature themselves. But when Boss Man tells them, jump, and they say, how high, you got to think to yourself, what's going on?
They were probably, the reason they probably picked up on Texas is because they were probably overdue some extra seats anyway.
No, they picked on Texas because it's extremely red. And
well, I know
he knows he can get away with it. He knows he can tell Abbott what to do, and Abbott will jump. And he knows the Texas Republicans, who generally speaking, will jump too.
Oh, I know that. I know he knows all of that, but I'm just saying Texas was probably due some additional seats anyway.
No, I don't think so. Not one bit.
Anyway, okay. All right, next one is coming on here, which impacts us, is new Bill 60. So it's called Fighting Delays Building Faster Act passes at Queen's Park. And this is what's called an omnibus bill, because it's basically here to fulfill a number of changes that Doug Ford wants to put through Parliament. Right, so
I just like to add one last thing to the previous discussion, and that is, don't count Trump out. He's a survivor, and we don't know how he'll have a bounce back effect, I'm sure. Anyway, Bill 60, carry on.
Yeah, Bill 60 passed into law, and it basically has a number of areas where it has an impact. It's one of these which will change a number of other things, like it's going to change Schedule 2 of the construction. It changes several sections of the Construction Act. It changes several sections of the Development Charges Act, several sections of the Go Transit Station Funding Act, the Highway Traffic Act, Local Roads Board Act, the Municipal Act. So it transfers, providing for the transfer of jurisdiction over water and sewage from regional municipality of Peel to the city of to the relevant cities there. So minor changes in that. Ontario Water Resources Act, Photo Card Act. Then amending may require evidence for an applicant for a photo card respecting the person's residency in Ontario when they're starting a new job. Right?
Yeah, there's lots of things to speed things up. The one that's biggest of concern, of course, is the perception that landlords can throw out tenants easier.
Well, actually, yeah, and let's talk about that. So it talks about there's a new section, basically subsection 43(1) is amended to provide notice under the Act that unless basically a tenant can't take action against a landlord unless they're not in arrears by rent. But the only people who can define whether a tenant is in arrears by rent isn't the landlord, but the landlord and tenant board. So that's going to be a bit of an awkward one.
So this is supposed to speed up evictions, and apparently, according to the article, it is small scale renters that are most happy about this, because small scale renters, people who only rent a few places, not the big huge apartment buildings or anything, might rent half their house or have one or two rental units that they bought. They were the ones that are celebrating this the most. They're the ones that are having trouble getting rid of renters.
Well, go ahead.
Well, they're the ones that are getting rid of renters that have problems, and we reported on that many times about how small scale landlords are going broke. Some people can't even pay their own bills because their tenant won't pay the bills. That means they can't pay the bill to the bank, and that puts them in a quandary. They can't pay the bill on there. They can't get the money out of the tenant, and they can't even get the tenant out of the delinquent tenant out. So, and we hear this from a lot of landlords. A lot of landlords go into becoming landlords without opening their eyes and not checking the credits of their prospective tenants. Tenants come in, may pay the first and last, but never pay another dime, and they sit there for 3 or 4 months before they finally get evicted, if they can get evicted. And there was a real big backlog of that around the time of COVID, because during the time of COVID, the Ontario government says you can't evict anybody during this time. Well, what did that leave a lot of landlords with? People who weren't paying the rent, and they're still obliged to pay the bank the money that they invested in the place. So we don't, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. Some people say, well, now the landlords are going to have all this power to throw everybody out. Maybe the large landowners or the large landlords will abuse the system. But obviously the small landlords are very happy this happened because they feel much safer now. So is it good or is it bad? What do you say as far as legal?
Yeah, the thing is, some of the original ideas that were going into the Residential Tenancies Act are not going in. For example, the question about moving to month-to-month rental, that continues on. There is no, so rentals can continue on for more than 12 months. So there's no kicking out of the process, that basically landlords as well as tenants desire that ongoing tenancy after the 12-month period. So that section of it that was threatened is not included in the final bill. The clause section 82 and section 83 are the two key ones that allow tenants to actually take actions against the landlord. So they've been modified a little bit, but basically they've been modified in such a way that you can't take an action unless you're up to date with your rent. And if I have a tenant come into my office and they want to take issues against their landlord, one of my first questions is, are you up to date with your rent? Because I will always say to them, you won't get anything out of a fight against your landlord if you don't keep up to date with the rent.
Okay. And so how does this Bill 60 help that help anyone or on this?
I'm not entirely sure with the LTA. I think they've tightened up a few timelines. I think, but a lot of the stuff in the RTA will continue as as currently.
Well, they said in the article that part of this is to speed that up.
Yeah, speeds things up. Yeah, speed the processing up.
And a lot of people are afraid that it's landlord tilted. However, the government says no, au contraire, it is only balancing things so the landlord and tenant are on the same plane.
I think that's possibly fair because the still it doesn't impact section the section of the RTA that basically says that the landlord and tenant board has a duty to try to preserve the tenancy wherever possible.
Yeah.
Right. So that still exists, but you're right. It's there to design more to balance, bring up. Over the last 5 years, it's probably fair to say the tenant that there's been an imbalance, particularly against the small landlord, the people who have less than 10 homes. Right. Many of them are actually, there's been too many examples of that class of people that have gotten themselves into serious trouble, lost their homes because of how long it's taken to evict people from from their tenancies.
Yeah, and we keep running into that over the years of small landlords, small time landlords that have 1 or 2 units, maybe one of them part of their own house, or they that kind of thing, and they were going broke because they couldn't get any money out of their tenants, and the law protected the tenants, et cetera, et cetera. And then when they do go back in to get the tenants out, the tenants have trashed the place. It's going to cost them a lot more money to fix it up, and there's no way of getting that money out of the previous tenant. It's just been a very weak process for the sort of so-called good landlord that gets abused by the tenant. But then, of course, there is also the landlords that are very bad and they're abusive to their tenants and throw them out so that they could do so-called renovations and, put a new fridge in and then say, okay, it's been renovated. Now I can ask for more money, that kind of thing. So there's all kinds of, basically the average person, I think, is the average landlord, and the average person is an ordinary person and gets victimized by that small percentage of the landlord or the tenant that happens to be lousy.
Yeah.
So, but that small percentage of those people who abuse the system are very, very costly. And I can tell you that myself, as being part of the board of the nonprofits, when you get a bad tenant in there and you got places full of cockroaches and you got to go in there afterwards and fix it all up, and it costs a huge amount of money. It takes a huge effort to get rid of them. And what they do is they put them right back on the list. That's what we discovered. A couple of years ago, Niagara Regional Housing will put a really bad tenant right back on the list. And when they see that, we have to tell everyone else that has that does affordable housing, say, watch out for this one. The Niagara region is not going to tell you that this one's a bad egg. They're going to let you take them in, and you're going to have to go through what we just did. So there are people that, I don't know. They just
Well,
can't live.
you see, the problem here is how you cannot. It's very difficult to maintain a bad tenant list, right?
Well,
Because
our friend Maria Recruit works with other landlords, and they do have a bad tenant directory of their own.
yeah, you can keep a directory of your own. You can even share that directory, but you can't. But the trouble is, making it public is problematic.
Yeah, that's the problem, but they do exist. So a bunch of
Oh
different
yeah,
landlords that have
but
had a bad,
for
they have that
example,
bad tenant, they share it with the other landlords, right?
yeah, there's a thing on a listing called Open Road, and sorry, Open Rooms, and Open Rooms will actually share bad tenants, but um, Open Room has actually been taken to court under defamation.
Well, all they do is shove it deeper underground, and they'll find a way of sharing it anyway. And uh, if you are a small time tenant and you do have a bad or small time landlord and you do have a bad tenant, that could ruin you. Like in our particular case, we have so many units that it's a loss that we have to a loss that we don't want to have to pay, but we can handle it. Have to spend a lot of money getting
Well,
rid of that
then you have
tenant.
to spend 10 grand or more on repairing the place.
Yeah, minimally,
Yeah,
because I saw one of the units that was repaired before and after,
yeah.
and it was pretty rough. I can tell you
Well,
that. Now we got
and
lucky. Our super did a lot of the work himself, and so that
yeah,
saved us a lot of money. But
yeah,
I'm
but
telling you,
again, yeah, but again, you know, I said 10 grand because, you know, 10 grand's easily spent on a housing on, you know, small housing projects these days. Even painting, you know, even painting every single room is probably most of that 10 grand.
yeah. So it's I don't know. It's an interesting thing here. Seriously, it
Yeah,
was. I don't myself. Uh, uh, it just means that a small amount of people, whether they're landlords or tenants, make a huge problem for the most of us.
yeah,
So you have
yeah.
one bad tenant, and among your dozens that are okay, ordinary people, and that one bad tenant can cost you a lot of money. And the same thing with a landlord. A landlord could really wants to up his the money he gets, sees that opportunity, and he plays the game of the reno game that you got to get rid of you because we're going to renovate. I guess Jared Kushner, I guess he had a pretty. I mean, I don't know how true this is, but I saw this where they in New York they couldn't evict anybody that didn't want to go. So what they did was they got a bunch of the rooms that they wanted out, and they started to do the renovations. They would do them late at night and make as much noise as possible in order to get rid of the rest of the tenants, force them to move out. And a lot of them just hung on, and they would just do it over and over and over
Well,
again.
one of the things that has not changed is the renoviction rules.
Yeah, well, that I was talking about that in the States and how they try to get people to force them out by intimidation or just
Yeah,
making
yeah.
life miserable for
Oh
them.
yeah. Well, they intimidate. Landlords do intimidate, and actually, there's been, and probably out of desperation, which is probably where some of these new rules might well help to fix some of this. Some of the landlords have been very frustrated and have turned to non-legal means to actually try and evict people.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about
Yeah.
by making it impossible to live there by making noise that they claim was due to renovations, like doing it
Yeah.
at the worst possible time. Yeah.
Well, and as Betty said, she moved in there in 2009. If she didn't paint the place, it wouldn't have gotten done. Yeah,
Oh yeah, well, a friend of mine, I remember this clearly. He moved into an apartment. He made an arrangement with the landlord. He says, I want to paint this place. I'll paint it, and you pay for half the paint, and I'll pay for half the paint. Okay?" And the landlord said, "Yep, okay." And then when it came time to collect, the landlord says, "Nah, I decided I'm not going to do that." But meanwhile, he got nicely painted walls
Yeah,
in his
I
unit.
wouldn't. I would have asked the landlord, but I would have just painted it. wouldn't have charged him. I'd have just gotten the paint and done it myself.
Well, they made an arrangement with the landlord,
Yeah,
you know,
you can go to the
because
board. You can go to the board and get paid on that if he'd made an arrangement, even a verbal
yeah,
one.
but he had nothing in writing, of course, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Even a verbal one will get accepted. I've seen them. All right.
oh well.
All right.
Anyway, what else we got there?
Okay, moving on. Home affordability concerns are rising in Niagara.
Here we go again. Here we go again. And the affordability word, the new word, the affordability word that our buddy Trump down in the down south of us has suddenly decided that affordability was a new word, and they're using that against him. Affordability this, affordability that. Well, affordability is throughout the world right now, and in Canada and in Niagara, yes, the average person that normally lives here finds affordability very, very difficult.
Yeah.
There
Well,
is,
basically, realtors, the Niagara Association of Realtors revealed the widespread concern about housing affordability in the day-to-day costs of of running homes here in Niagara.
yeah, and we talked about them building higher end homes, but nothing affordable. We've talked about the people who would
Yeah.
normally buy in, let's say, let's say Mount Carmel, right? Will now go and buy in Cherrywood Acres instead, and those people who would have normally bought in Cherrywood Acres are buying older homes in older neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And what's happening is the house you expected to live in, when according to your parents, you are actually buying in the next tier down because that's the one you can afford. The problem with that is it pushes everybody down. And this came up at a board meeting that we had, and we discovered that we were talking to people from the Niagara housing, and they were talking about affordable housing and so on from the region. So we were talking about buying apartment that already exists, an old one, getting it fixed up and converting it to affordable units or not for profit. The problem there is the people said, no. What happens then is that you got an older building there that are already supplies renting units to people of mid to lower income, basically the lower end income. So if you bought that and converted it to affordability, what are you going to do with the people in there now?
Yeah.
Right.
And
what are you going to do with them? They still are going to have to find a place like that, which is hard to find.
And one of the questions that's raised here is that 9 in 10 residents say they're worried about the next generation's ability to afford a home.
Yes, and a lot of people have just given up on homes, and that is something that is new in Canada. When a certain amount of population has just given up on, it says the survey found that 72% of renters have given up on owning a home. Usually, you rented as a way and means of saving money, and then finding the resources to buy a home. That's what most renters did. A lot of renters just stay renting. It's just easier for them. I've known people that preferred to rent, and they rented all their lives. But most people, when they go into an apartment, think of the next stage in their life, and they're going to buy a house. So now it's 72% maybe. Years ago, it was 25% had given up on getting a home, but now it's 75%. it says, in addition, 68% of residents said that the state of housing will influence how they vote. 51% in agreement, and 17% somewhat agree, and 50% indicated that time for a change. So this is going to affect the local elections. I think Paul Amir would be pretty happy to hear this, that there is something that might shake up the status quo at City Hall.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest issues is going to be affordability, housing affordability. I'm not so sure that the councilors are ready for that. They do dabble in affordability from time to time. It comes up. It is given lip service.
Well,
but how much are they actually doing?
Yeah.
Or can they do? Let's put it that way, to force more affordable housing.
The only way they can enforce more affordable housing is, I think, the municipalities have to take on and do some building projects themselves that are to the affordable sector.
Yeah, that's possible, but it's very hard to get the developers to come on board. You're sitting in a situation where why do the developers want to get in it when they can make money by just building a home on a piece of property and getting profit from it, rather than building 4 homes on a piece of property and getting the same profit. Why not build one big one? It's a lot easier, it's cost effective, and you can charge a lot more for it.
Yep. Well, okay, so Brock University has been doing some research and highlights several contributing factors, lack of affordable housing units being one of them, continually rising prices and population growth and demographic shifts being we talk about demographic shifts all the time, because how many people are new Niagarans hail out of Toronto or Hamilton or other places where the housing market's a lot higher than it is traditionally been here.
Anyway, it's interesting. It says here that it's not just housing affordability; it is general overall affordability that might be the driver here.
Yeah,
and that's true.
That may actually be the driver for not just it's a driver anyway for a lot of things. Yeah.
Well, it says that basically now at one time there, the housing sector had exploded much more than everything else. So cars, washing machines, everything go on this slope where they gradually get more expensive as your wages go up, etc. But housing spiked way high and went way beyond the person's ability to catch up to it. And that was the reason. But right now, general affordability on all things is a problem. Not only can they not afford the rent plus good food, plus a car, plus any amenities, you're going paycheck to paycheck. Things are getting more expensive and you're getting squeezed from all ways. So if you lived in Cherrywood Acres and now you live in Silvertown, that's because you were able to buy something in Silvertown, but you couldn't buy anything in Cherrywood Acres where your parents live. You can't afford that now, so you got to go down to Silvertown, and what you do there is you buy something that somebody of a lower income could afford. Now you bounce them out of that, and where do they go?
Yeah, and affordability has always been a big thing here in Niagara. Right? Yes, we've had these migrants coming in from Toronto and elsewhere, but for local Niagarans, affordability has always been the biggest concern.
Yes. So it says a few years ago, a few years ago, concerns about affordability were focused largely on housing prices, which had peaked in Niagara at an average of $815,900 in March 2022, followed by years as the Bank of Canada incrementally raised its interest rates to 5%. But even with both prices and rates falling, the average home price in Niagara is $595,000 in October and the overnight rate dropped by 2.5%, affordability has become about more than the price of a home.
Yeah, there you go. Right. I think that kind of sums it up. Right. And it is much more than just the price of a home. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about at Paul's show yesterday. We talked about when we were looking at the budget. That I would say that he mentioned this, that when of course he's looking forward to the elections next year, the city hall elections, the municipal elections.
I get you.
And he said that year after year they had talking points. It was the homeless. They were going to help the homeless. Well, that didn't happen, did it?
No.
Nothing much happened in the way of a homeless. And now it's going to be the affordability issue. We'll see. We'll see if they have anything. There's going to be a lot of words, but are they actually going to do anything? Can they do anything?
It's easy to make words a lot different, a lot more. It's a lot harder to actually make solutions.
Everybody had a plan for the homeless, but obviously none of those came to fruition.
Yeah. All right.
You know, is anybody going to have a plan for the affordability crisis we're sitting right on now?
Yeah.
How can we? How can the municipality of Niagara Falls, help with that? The only thing you can do is partner in with people who build more affordable homes. And unfortunately, if you want those votes, you're going to have a plan, and you're going to have to convince the voter that you are at least thinking very strongly on that. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to, that seems to be the biggest issue on doesn't matter any democracy you want to pick. Affordability seems to be the problem, because the middle class finds itself being reduced.
Yeah. Yeah.
You find a big push down from the top, where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And as the poor are getting poorer, they kind of sucking in more and more of that middle class. So there's this gap, this rising gap between the multi-rich and the middle class. And there's that band of professionals in between that go up or down depending. So I don't know, our demographics are changing, our society's changing.
Well, we are sadly in a situation, I feel, where the average wage is en route to meet the minimum wage sometime in the next 10 years, you know, or be within $5 of it.
Yeah, it's trending down. I mean, you don't see
been trending down for years.
Oh.
And
well,
you know,
in some areas, some of the job market is booming. I talked to the guys that came in here to do our furnace maintenance, and they can't find guys. Their guys are going all over the place. There's lots of work opportunities in construction and HV, so they can't keep guys on staff because they're always getting better jobs somewhere. Yeah. So basically speaking, I don't know.
Yeah.
So some people are making well. Some of the construction HV people, some of the tradesmen are doing well, which is nice to hear. But overall, generally speaking, the middle class person is finding an incredible strain. And when you keep doing that, remember, it was the middle class that caused the French Revolution. You know what I mean? Like the poor people had revolts, but they had no organized revolution. It's the middle class also in the United States, basically. It was sort of the aristocracy. Sorry, it was the aristocracy, the moneyed non-aristocracy in the United States that pulled the pin on Britain too. So the revolutions happen. The organized revolutions, like successful revolutions, do not happen from the bottom. They begin in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's as likely in America today, actually.
That could happen in America today.
Yeah.
I think it's less likely with the revolution inside the MAGA party right now, though. this has stopped the tear between left and right becoming so stupid that the only solution they could have is one of violence.
Yeah.
And we find that the pressure's in the Democrats too.
Yeah.
We see
Well,
it here.
I think
If we see it here, look at the liberals got into power, and what did they do? They used every conservative talking point. They
yeah,
got rid of the
yeah,
carbon tax. They started to build infrastructure. They did all kinds of other things. They built up their military. All these things the conservatives said they wanted to do. So what happened to the liberals? All of a sudden they become conservatives.
yeah,
You see what I mean?
yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. All right. 16 days of activism is planned by Birchway for their shelters.
Yeah, what's that all about?
I'm trying to find that myself. Okay, so basically they are, and I think this is more St. Catherine's based than it is here in Niagara Falls. But so what they're looking at is 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. It's a campaign they're starting in Niagara. So Birchway Niagara, formerly Women's Place of South Niagara, is leading the initiative, and they're running a series of events from November 25th to December 10th, 2025. So that's today, starting today till December 10th, they're going to be doing a campaign to raise awareness, spark dialogue, and mobilize action against intimate partner violence, sexual harassment, assault, human trafficking, and femicide. And who better, in a way, with Birchway Niagara being the people who run shelters for abused women, who better to highlight that?
Yeah, one of the groups is the event organized by Zombie Clubs of Niagara Falls and St. Catharines.
Yeah,
They have some
I
good.
spoke wrongly. I said I thought it was mainly based in St. Catharines, but I think it's more in Niagara Falls.
Could be regional too. But
Yeah,
the fact of the matter is, it's gender based violence. But what they don't speak in, which is rather unfortunate here, we do of course have our own domestic um, abuse. We've always had it, and fighting gender based, usually in a domestic, where a man lords it over a woman, beats
yeah,
her up, and then she finds no real option. She can't leave the guy because they're tied together economically, and she usually gets continually abused, and it's a very hard thing. And when guys come around, and in those few cases where guys come around and realize that how abusive they've been and how wrong that is, they usually come from homes where that happened, and the woman they're with comes from homes where that happened, and when the man turns it around, that's a rare thing, but it happens, and
yeah.
it I don't know, it's a difficult thing, but here, what they don't tell you is that a lot of new Canadians coming into the country have this division between men and women. Men are more important,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of a domestic abuse that is accepted within the cultures that are coming into Canada. Now they're
that's
not
true.
allowed to say any of that, but you talk to any of these. Many years ago, I talked to some of these people who worked with battered women and stuff like that, and they told me that was a problem. They had a problem with new Canadians that had cultural divides between
And
men and
some,
women, where a man was allowed to abuse the woman
yeah,
physically, and as a matter of fact, some cultures expect that would happen.
yeah. And in fact, actually, that's what's worst about it is, of course, in some cultures, it's expected the man abuses the woman, and it's like, well, you didn't hit your wife 15 times yesterday. Type, I'm being cynical, but that type of attitude has been heard amongst some groups.
It's so weird that I remember reading about North African culture, and I'll have to bring it up a little later on, where the women go to the well, kind of, and if one of their member hasn't been beaten up by their or slapped around, they don't slap around to hurt them, but they slap around to hurt them a little bit. If they haven't been slapped by their husband, if they haven't been slapped by their husband, that means their husband is weak, and that woman will be taunted as a woman who has a weak husband.
Yeah, and
because the husband hasn't hit her.
Yeah, and that's bad, because that actually perpetrates the violence between generations in that community.
I talked to an African guy one time, a new Canadian, and we were talking about women, and he says, "Look, if you got to slap them around once in a while, because otherwise they'll go hysterical. If you don't want to," he says, "I don't want to, but if I think she's going to go hysterical, I have to give her a cuff or two, bring her down." And she expects it, and he expects to do it, and she expects to get it. So how do you break that kind of a thing?
Yeah.
So you're not only do you have your own domestic violence, if you like to put it that way, stuff that you already have dealt with, and then you have a new bunch of it coming in with new Canadians. How then do you address that? And you're pretty well not allowed to speak about it, because someone's going to call you a racist, unfortunately. But
and actually, we were talking in regards to when we're talking about questions about borders. We've also said that anytime you mention closing borders, that also raises that racist tag, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, to a point. But when you're a country like Canada, where most of your new immigrants are coming from anywhere else, from legitimate ones, that has less of an effect in Canada. The closing the borders of the United States along the southern border was basically just to stop economic migrants coming in, and we do the same thing. Basically, we try to stop economic migrants coming in, because it's very difficult to get them integrated into society if you don't have job skills or connections here in the country. Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ways there. But as far as domestic violence, a lot of new Canadians bring their own style of domestic violence, and we find that other cultures do not think of women as equals, or they are different. Anyone from China or South Korea that I've talked to, women, boys are better. Boys are better. If you have a son, they're really happy that you have a son, but not so happy if you had a daughter.
Well, it's the same it's the same in. I've heard that statement in so many places, like India, Pakistan, Africa. Boys are always better. Boys, if you talk to a pregnant woman, what do you want to get? What are you looking for, boy or a girl? I want a boy, because boys are better.
Yeah, and in fact, we found that it is very difficult in Canada to stop the abortion of female fetuses.
Yeah.
When they do an ultrasound and see that it's a female, they abort it, and then they go again and they try to get the next one. And if it's a male, they keep it. If it's a female,
we shouldn't be giving the sex at the initial ultrasound.
Well, in clinics where all this happens, the nurses and staff are very frustrated, because they know what's happening. Yeah. And it's usually new Canadians. It's usually Far East or African or whatever. They look, it's a girl, we'll get rid of it.
Yeah, those that have that have objection to girls. Yeah.
Yeah, and what happens is, too, in different cultures, women find their status through their sons.
Yeah.
They are celebrated as the mother of Peter, the mother of Dave, famous talk show host, and that kind of thing,
Yeah, I know. And that's the wrong way to be dealing with it. It's not. You don't. Why can't there are women that do some fantastic things in life.
No, there aren't. Nope,
Yes,
nope,
there
no,
are.
there aren't.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
Of course there is. I mean, that's it, but the whole point is what you don't hear from Birchway or anyone else is what is known to them, but not very well shared, is that a lot of new Canadians bring their own forms of domestic violence with them, and it's very hard. And we talked about this in the employment too, where South Asians restrict certain castes. They might hire a so-called untouchable, but they'll make sure that they don't do well or they advance through the company, kind of thing. It's very hard for us to spot that kind of prejudice because it's not the stuff that we're used to.
Yeah.
And we tend to turn a blind eye to it and focus just on the black white type of racial prejudice that we're most know about.
Well, those sort of things, how would you actually be able to, the untouchable thing that you just mentioned there, how would you even know that a person is an untouchable and B, that they were being discriminated against?
That's not just that too, but you have the different caste systems, the Brahmas, there's 7 of them, I think. And even with them, there is prejudices and things like that. And that's brought over from India. And of course, you have the attitudes of certain groups towards women and so on. So it's a growing problem. Due to our immigration, it's a growing problem. It's pretty hard enough to take care of our own domestic abuses, the ones that are homegrown. But when we bring in others, that's going to be tough for Birchway going forward.
And we're going to have to end it at that point because I've got to get going. I've got a meeting to go to.
And I'll bring up Gaza again. It looks like the Israelis are bombing anybody they want to, anytime they want to, for any kind of excuse. It's very, I don't know if
we've got to get an international
all the aid is getting in there or not.
We need an international force in there.
Yeah, we don't know when that's going to happen. The Israelis are going to resist it right to the last. All they know is they just have to hold off, and sooner or later, somebody in the administration in the United States changes, and they get their way. Look what's happening in the West Bank right now. People are being hurt. The olive trees are being broken down. The houses are being burnt by the settlers, and they do that with impunity.
Yeah,
they are gangsters, and they're getting away with it because Bibi likes it, and the U.S. has no spine. I don't know when they'll ever have a spine, but the whole idea of the amount of money that gets sucked into Israel from the West is becoming more and more of an issue. So we'll see how that moves forward.
Yeah.
Anyway.